Osteoarthritis, we're going to talk about it from a perspective in animals about degenerative osteoarthritis. Okay? That's our major type. We can also see things like immune-mediated polyarthritis, so an autoimmune condition. We can see septic arthritis, where we have infection. We can even see neoplastic arthritis, right? Cancer. But osteoarthritis in dogs is usually a secondary phenomenon. What I mean by that is we think about things like hip dysplasia. Right? Hip dysplasia just means the hip joint grew poorly. Right? But because of that dysplasia, you then get secondary arthritis from that disease process. Same thing with elbow dysplasia. Right? We may have incongruity. We may have an ununited anchineal process. We may have an osteochondrosis lesion, right? An OC-OCD lesion. Right? But those things are then causing that joint to become inflamed and develop arthritis. The opposite of that is primary osteoarthritis. So that's usually what people get. Right? We get our older folks that have walked and walked and walked. They get old knees, right? They start to wear out the cartilage. And in veterinary medicine, those are our cats too. Cats get primary OA, right? Think about it. You don't see a lot of cats that come in for hip dysplasia or elbow dysplasia. But those older cats, those obese cats that have a really hard time getting around, right? They've worn out those joints. So that's primary OA. Secondary OA is what we see in dogs, elbow dysplasia, hip dysplasia. We can even get secondary OA in the knee. It might be from an OC or an OCD lesion, but most commonly, arthritis of the knee is going to be associated either with a cranial cruciate ligament injury or a patella luxation. And there's been research that shows that dogs that get stifle OA, they're going to get more OA from a cruciate ligament injury than they are from a patella luxation. And in the tarsus, we're usually going to see it secondary to an OCD lesion. We don't get a ton of tarsal OA. Shoulder OA, sometimes secondary again to OC-OCD, or just some looseness in that joint, but we don't get a ton of that. In our world, elbow, hip, and stifle are our big three arthritic joints. We don't really see that much in the carpus either, do we? From that perspective, once we've identified that on a macroscopic level, we can see that with radiographs, which get into, or things like that, restricted joint motion. Right? But what's happening at a microscopic level?